I've learned about the complex power of getting to write one's own version of the truth, and asked whether the more stories we have, the closer we'll come to a better world. This is a quote written by Hira Sol, one of our exchange partners this past semester. Hi everyone, and welcome to From Bars to Books. In this hour-long podcast episode, 4 college students will be discussing student perceptions on education within the prison system, their own personal and educational experiences regarding a letter exchange that they have participated in with incarcerated individuals taking a class that mirrors theirs, as well as what it means to deserve an education and what it means to deserve anything in general. To start us off, here's Jet and the rest of the cast.
Jet, I'm 20 and I'm currently majoring in English.
I'm Anna, I'm 19 and I'm currently majoring in creative writing.
I'm Murdoch, I am 22 and I'm majoring in English.
My name is Charlotte, I'm 20 years old, and I am also an English major. In the beginning of this public writing class that we're all taking, I remember I had a conversation with my girlfriend about the program that we were involved with, which is a letter exchange between ourselves and incarcerated students at a correctional facility nearby. I remember that when I told her what I was doing, she was a little bit taken aback, and she told me that I was a better person than her because she didn't know how I could have open and honest communication with these people who committed what she called heinous crimes. She didn't believe that people in prison deserved an education. And so then at the end of this semester, when we were asked to pitch a community issue that we cared about, that we found that other people had different opinions on than us, I decided to go back to that conversation and pitch it to my classmates. I wanted to perform more research into and discuss the argument of whether or not incarcerated people do deserve to have access to educational programs such as the letter writing program that we're involved in, as well as the benefits and social controversy that surround programs like this.
Yeah, I remember in the beginning when Charlotte was proposing her project, I felt so connected to it in a way that I didn't expect to. At first, I really wanted to do a project about mental health, etc., and that is very important, and we do touch upon how education in prison and incarcerated people, how it affects them. So I'm still getting a bit of what I proposed to, but yeah, what Charlotte really proposed really spoke to me, and as we continued to do those exchanges within the letters and our partners,
It's okay.
I realized that I really had an inkling to really do this project. It's something that really interested me, and I really do want to spread how education is so impactful to anyone, and anyone deserves it. And that's another thing, who are we to really say who deserves what? So we'll also be talking about that.
I think for the project, I've changed it so many times. Originally, I started off talking about how the arts are underrepresented when it comes to scholarships and funding. And then after talking to my exchange partner, I was really moved about her telling me that she wants to help other pregnant women in jail to give birth because she knows how scary it's like. It was her 3rd baby, and she really felt there should be more resources. So I was like, I want to study lack of resources in the prison system. And from there, it went on to education, which we're going to dive into later. But I think it's been really interesting to see how this podcast and our research has evolved. And to add on to what you were talking about, your girlfriend, I know what my partner did. She said it in the first letter. And even despite that, communicating through letters, I'm still able to see her as a person. I can see her as someone who has made a mistake and, she's paying for it.
I think because we're behind these paper walls, we don't have this vision of the people that we're talking to. Mm-hmm. Their essence is in their words. Yeah. And so that's how they're live in our minds. We don't see them for who they were. We don't see them for who they're going to be, because we're encapsulated in this short semester of 4 months. we know that after this semester is over, that this letter exchange program will also be over, and we will never hear from these people again. So I think that that's another reason why we are able to disconnect ourselves from their past.
Yeah.
And to add on to that, it's kind of like twofold, because we know that they don't know who we are either. So we're not getting any judgment on their end either. And it feels like this completely open space where we can communicate with each other, right?
Yeah, it is, because I've told my partner like random stuff that has happened to me throughout the week. I've been like, work was really rough, but it's nice talking to you again. And I also can I see like growth, even though obviously after the semester's over, it's done. We've spoken about how like our priorities, what they're like, and she was telling me how she has discovered strength in her and how much she's changed.
Just by writing these letters with you.
Oh, yeah.
That's really incredible.
That was something that me and my exchange partner had delved a lot into. There's a lot before starting this capstone project, when we were just given the initial ideas and thoughts about it, I was dead set on talking about my own experiences with homelessness and how I have been able to help so many people across Miami and express it through that lens and like look through how homelessness has affected a lot of the local Miami area. But I've had interpersonal issues, and I had been dealing with a lot internally and externally, to the point where when we were coming back to this topic of the capstone and reading my partner's proposal for the project, I knew then I had to express myself in this sort of way, especially after a lot of what the letter exchange and what the class has done to me personally, making me more compassionate and making me want to bring this voice and bring this sort of perspective to other students, because I don't think many students, I think that this class should be taught more for other students to get this perspective and to understand why this is important to us.
Yeah, and like I remember when I first started this class, like I didn't even know education in prison existed, which is crazy, because now I know so much about it, and talking to these people personally. Not even people, well, yes, people, because now I know what y'all's partner said too. But it's just talking to someone who's incarcerated and really getting the perspective and seeing how educated they are and seeing how the system is actually helping them, and it's not like some... excuse like my word here, ratchet. Like, it's not ratchet at all. It's like these people genuinely know what they're talking about, and when we were exchanging these letters, we each got a topic. For context, we each got a topic that we would have to at least talk about once within our personal stuff. We would have to talk about this topic, and I just remember reading my first letter and being like, wow, like my partner has some really good insights. My partner's name is Firefly, and she spoke a lot about her perspective on why she was in prison. She never really touched upon like Anna's partner did on why she's in prison, so I didn't really know what went on there. But anyway, it really surprised me how educated they really are, and I really wondered, when I found out we were doing this project, I wondered how many other people know that these programs exist in prison. So with that, I'm leading us to our first question: is education an easily accessible resource within the prison system?
I think that when I first started this class, that I automatically assumed that it was an easily accessible resource, because I remember opening the syllabus and reading that we were going to be involved in this lengthy program where we would be writing letters back and forth to incarcerated students who were in basically the mirror class of ours. It was the same class, but in the correctional institution. And I thought to myself, oh, well, I've heard of this program before that we're interacting with, and it's been around for an extended period of time. It must be very successful. There must be plenty of educational opportunities available. And even going back to something that I remember we talked about in the beginning of class, Orange is the New Black is one of my favorite shows. And I remember thinking to myself, well, there's plenty of educational resources in that show, and it's based off of a true story, so that must be how it is. Boy, was I wrong.
You guys were all so much more well-informed than I was. I thought the How to Go Public class, I thought it was on publishing. So I was like, oh my god, this is, yeah, I know.
You're not the only one.
As a creative writing major, I was like, oh my god, I need that. I want to know how to publish. I was wrong. But back to the question, I found out that most prisons offer basic literacy programs for prisoners functioning below the 6th grade level and GED classes for those wanting to complete high school. For those who have completed high school, post-secondary educational opportunities may be available through contracts with community colleges and universities. If accepted into a college-level program, it is possible for a prisoner to earn an associate degree and perhaps even go on to obtain a bachelor degree. However, some prisoners prefer to earn a vocational certificate. I got this from Prison Fellowship, which is a Christian nonprofit foundation, but I do want to disclose that most of our research comes from the exchange program that we've been doing. But if we're going to talk about other types of resources available to inmates, there's also classes that help them with life skills, Bible courses, and some even have 12-step programs as well.
And Anna, those programs, they sound really amazing, and I am aware that some of them are available, but from the research that I was doing with my own exchange partner, I found out that they're not available to everybody who is incarcerated. Lifers without parole don't qualify to partake in educational programs such as obtaining their GED, business and marketing, modality, culinary, or cosmetology. My exchange partner, Hida Sol, says, thank God for programs like this letter writing exchange program that we've been a part of, Women with Dignity, Gavel Club, family integration training, and different faith programs that allow lifers without parole to stay busy and proactive.
I think that that's really interesting because when I spoke to my exchange partner, we went over the classes. So she's taking an AI one and she's taking a creative writing class, but she already has a bachelor's degree from before she was incarcerated. She has a business degree, so that could definitely change things.
Yeah, I found from my partner, Firefly, she said that the facility that they're currently in only has one vocational program, which is cosmetology, but it's really hard to even get into it because apparently you're not allowed to take it if you have over 3 years remaining on your sentence. So she was expressing her concerns and how it made no sense to her because she would love to be part of it now, but since she had over 3 years of her sentence, she's not allowed to. So she doesn't really understand that, and that's just one.
I'm sorry if this is a personal question about Firefly, and if you even know the answer to this question, but do you know if she is in there for life, or do you know if she still has a limited number of years on her sentence?
I literally have no idea. But I would think, since she's expressed, I think that she has limited years because I think that she said that she's taking it for after she gets out. So, but I don't want to assume because I generally she didn't say straight up oh, I'm here for this many years. You know what I mean?
I was gonna ask about the 3 years. Is it 3 years left
until 3 years left? Yeah.
So once those so if they have more than 3 years left,
they can't get into cosmetology.
Can they wait and then apply or
Okay. But still, it'll probably be so hard to get into it.
Yeah. But... especially because in general, it's really hard for them to get accepted into these classes.
Yeah, I think maybe the reason that they don't want those people to take those courses if they don't have 3 years or less left is because you don't know if you're going to be transferred to a different facility.
Right.
And so they might be just taking up seats in that class where people who are guaranteed to get out in a limited number of years could be in that classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. This is speculation. I don't know how the prison works, but that's just my thoughts on it. We sent out a perception of education survey to a classroom of incarcerated students. These were not our exchange partners. This was an anonymous survey. But one of the questions that we did ask was if they believed that education was an easily accessible resource within the prison system. It was split down the middle. unfortunately, we only received 6 responses from this survey because it's kind of hard to reach people on the inside. But 3 of them did believe that these resources were easily accessible, and 3 of them did not. The next question that we asked them was kind of just to back that one first question up, was if they were a part of any other educational programs besides this class, and again, split directly down the middle.
Oh my gosh.
3 and 3. Which I thought was very interesting. And then we asked, our third question was if they believed that there were enough programs available, and all 6 of them said no. They all believed that there should be more programs in the prison system.
And do we think this is a problem? This is more of like a personal question for us. Do you guys think it's a problem of awareness? Because, like, is there enough awareness to fund these programs? Like, do you believe that if people knew that these programs existed, we would be able to fund them better? Like, is it a funding problem?
When Murdoch and I were talking to our other professor about this specific issue, she mentioned to us that it's not necessarily the funding of the programs that is the main problem, but it is the fact that once these programs are basically fully fledged and inside of the prison system, that we become a nuisance to the staff within the system, because they have to clear out rooms. Sometimes they don't have the space. Sometimes, they have to have guards on duty, both to get the prisoners out of their cells and to also watch the prisoners when they're inside of the classroom. They have to check in all of the teachers. They have to those are the people who, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but there is a program called Lantern, which the prison system uses, and it's basically the equivalent of Canva, but it's for the prisoners. So
I didn't know.
When the teachers are sending in the assignments for the students, like the PDFs, they have to send it to the Department of Corrections, and the Department of Corrections has to basically filter through all of the PDFs that the teachers have sent to them, and then they have to send it to the prisoners. So it's kind of like, it's so much extra work on them, and they're already underpaid, and they're extremely understaffed, and they are working in less than desirable conditions. So to put this extra, I don't want to call it a burden, because it's not a burden, it's helping people. But to them, it's a burden.
Do you think it's a burden because they think they don't deserve it? Like, we actually asked this question, like, do people, both incarcerated and FIU students, believe that incarcerated people deserve an education? Like, we asked that. That's our next point, by the way.
I wonder if it's because they don't think that they deserve it, or if it's because they don't want to bother with it, and that's just work for them.
I feel like it's a systemic issue too, though, because easily, like, it would be an option to hire more staff, to pay them better, and obviously nobody's going to want to do that.
Unfortunately, while that's a good point, this prison is a public prison, so they are federally funded, and public prisons do not receive that much funding, so it would not be very easy for them to hire people to work.
From what was explained to me, what was explained to us, me and Charlotte, there are so many factors that not even we fully understand. Like, not even us as students, even our professor, even the people who is a part of that system doesn't even fully grasp the entire picture, or like what factors go into it. So it could be anything. Because
the guards, they're not required to disclose any information to
Yes,
us.
I do remember listening to the interview, and that part specifically, like, really caught my attention, because she was talking about how they don't have to tell you anything. They can just be like, oh, there's an issue, there's like, you can't go in, basically.
Yeah.
And she was explaining about how certain things she doesn't even know about until her students tell her, which it makes sense because I know that with my exchange partners, there was like twice where there was an issue where she couldn't reach out to me, and I had asked, the professor, I was like, hey, like, do you know what happened? Like, is she okay? Is she gonna come back? And she was like, I can't tell you if she's gonna stay in the class or not because something happened and she didn't know. I had to wait until my exchange partner reached out to me and was like, all is good. I'm gonna do my very best to stay in the class and, continue to write. And as for last exchange, I don't think I got a letter, and I don't think I found out why.
And you may never know.
Yeah.
I really want to get back to the deserve aspect of it, because I feel like, in the beginning we talked about how your girlfriend was saying more so like along the lines of like, why would I talk to heinous or whatever it was. I'm not gonna get into it, but like, obviously some people think that they don't deserve an education. Some people do think that they deserve an education, but like, what does deserve mean to us? What does that even mean to us? Like, what is it? What do you guys think?
Does anyone deserve anything?
Yeah.
How do we measure that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that deservingness is a really complex concept. It's shaped by cultural, philosophical, and personal beliefs. Some people might argue that to deserve something is to deserve a basic human right, just by being human. Some people believe that these rights include safety, education, in our case, freedom, and just the right to pursue a fulfilling life. Other people might believe that deservingness is tied to effort or merit, suggesting that people can earn rewards or consequences solely based off of their actions. Ultimately, what someone deserves, I think, usually depends on the lens in which you view that question itself. Personally, to me, deservingness has always been an idea that challenges me. I have to think deeply about what we owe ourselves as people and what we owe to each other. It's not necessarily about entitlement, but rather a commitment to respect and to recognizing the shared humanity in each and every one of us. I have found that my understanding of the term deserve is constantly changing, and I also recognize the complexity of deservingness beyond basic human rights. I understand that hard work and commitment often feel more meaningful when they lead to opportunities or recognition, but even then, it's still a really tricky topic for me. I still struggle with how I measure it. I still struggle with who gets to decide who deserves what. However, I lean towards a vision where deservingness invites us to see each other with compassion. And, I'm sorry, I'm getting lost here. Okay, it's about acknowledging that while we can't control everything in life, we can strive to create spaces where people feel valued, respected, and supported, because everyone, no matter their story, deserves that.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting that you said, how do we measure and who gets to decide, and that you still battle with those questions, because as a Christian, I don't battle with those questions at all, because for me, deserve is like linked with grace and God's grace, and as like a lot of people know, maybe don't, God gives us a lot of grace continuously. So as a Christian, I take on that, and I just think we are nobody to decide who deserves anything. So for me, I don't even think about the question who gets to decide, because I put it all in God's hands. But yeah, so for me, deserve is not even like a thing I can control. You know what I mean?
I really like how you tied it into commitment, because that's not a word I thought of when thinking of deserved. And it feels obvious that it should be, but it's not. I think it's mostly because my parents really looked down on the word deserved. So for me, like, deserved was synonymous to like entitlement, like throughout childhood. So like growing up, it's like, oh, why do you deserve something? And if you say like, oh, it's because I worked hard for it, then it's like, okay, yeah, but life isn't fair. So like, why you more than like someone else?
Well, for me, deserve, I've seen it more as like a justification for hard work. when somebody works hard, or when somebody pushes for something and they get that reward, they deserve it, or they have that belief, or that strength that says, hey, I have worked for this, I've done these things, I deserve this, I deserve that. I know it can sound very egotistical and very selfish to think in that sort of way, but then there's the other aspect of how to deserve something can be interpreted by anybody. It's not just about what you believe, it's about how others can see that too. So in that way, to deserve is to care and really believe about what you want or what you could get.
This might be repetitive, but for your definition of deserve, do you think you deserve something if you go above beyond, or just because you put in the hard work, you deserve like some sort of result?
Well, I would more associate it with the second point, but then again, there's also that other aspect of just because you put your hard work and soul and everything into something doesn't automatically mean you deserve it, or it doesn't mean you might get it at all. But I think that's another beautiful aspect of it too, to put yourself out there and to have that ability to work hard and do something that you really care for, and then on top of it saying that you deserve it. That's powerful.
I feel like it goes back to credit then, to some extent.
Yeah.
Like an acknowledgement.
And kind of to tie this back to whether or not people believe that incarcerated people deserve an education, when talking to our professor, she said that she believes that, yes, incarcerated people do deserve an education. Why? Because everybody deserves an education. So she did not think that they deserved it any more or any less than anybody else. She said that... I'm trying to figure out what to say from here because I don't want to read off the script.
You're reading a quote, though.
You haven't talked about the survey yet.
Yeah, 99% of people said that the FA students, 99% said that that they deserve an education. So maybe we could tie into that. I mean, like, at first we didn't think that they were going to think that.
So then, similarly to what our professor said, in a survey that we sent out to 108 FIU students, wait, where is the survey, guys?
Up.
Okay. So, similarly to what our professor said, we sent out a survey to FIU students and we received 104 responses. The first question was if they believed that incarcerated people deserve an education, and 99% of people said yes to that question.
Crazy.
One person out of 104 said that they did not deserve an education.
I wonder what went through their minds.
I think about that too.
When it was one person out of 104 said no to deserving education. Like, what did they believe that, like, what do they think deserve me? Like, that just...
Not to start a witch hunt, but I think I know who it was.
Really? No way. Okay, continue.
However, the next question that we asked is if they're aware of the educational programs that are available to incarcerated students, and 68% said no. They're not aware of these programs.
I wonder what the other percent, what programs they know of in specific, or like their connection to it.
Me too.
Because I wouldn't have known anything about it had it not been for, I think Behind Bars is what it's called. The episode on PBS, that was really informative.
Yeah.
I mean, we had spoken about it earlier too, how like a lot of our experiences with learning about these programs have come from not even school or resources that are like easily defined or easily accessible. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. But I mean, the only reason that I know that these programs even exist is because of a TV show that aired like 2-3 years ago.
Which one?
Adam Ruins Everything. It's about this guy who it's about a comedian who goes around and he interacts with different people, and he exposes the dirty truth about like everyday things, and like it's supposed to be a comedy show, but essentially he has an episode about prisons, and he talks about Pell Grants. He talks about how education works in those systems, how the prison system in general is a very destructive force on the American society, or society in general.
I think that's so interesting. I didn't know about educational programs, but the only knowledge I had before was from documentaries. I think in class we had spoken about 13th. That shaped the knowledge that I have now.
For me, it's going back to Orange is the New Black. That's basically the only, well, no, that's the only TV show that I had experience with. Another question that we had on this survey was, do you know someone who is or has been incarcerated? And I think that can be a very big factor in what other answers people choose on this survey. Because if you already know someone who has been incarcerated, you might have this predisposed notion of who that person is, and you might not think that they deserve an education. They may not have taken advantage of these programs that were available. For example, somebody in my immediate family was incarcerated, and I never talked to that person when he was released again. And I don't think that he even participated in any of these educational programs. And before this class started, I had a very negative perception of people who were in prison because of this person in my life. So I think that through this class, my entire life was changed. You know what I mean? And I think that people would benefit from learning about the programs that are available for these people and how it changes their lives as well inside of the prison system. Yeah,
unlike you guys, I didn't watch any show about this. I had no idea that educational programs were in prison. I had this perceived notion that prison was this thing where you're just locked in a cell and you go to the gym and you hit the bars on the thing, and then I was so uneducated. But even if I didn't know, when they first asked, because in our class we actually started with that question about, in the first day of class, I remember they asked, do you know anyone who's been incarcerated? And I really had to think about it. And I think that also made me be more open to it, because the one person that I do know that's incarcerated, he's a good guy. And so when I went to this project, I was very open-minded about it. But see, when I got home and I told my mom about this project, it was a whole different thing about you have to be safe and this and that. But who is to say that person, one decision is what shapes their entire personality and their entire being? And I think that's the wrong perception that people have on people.
And not only that, but you don't even know what that person was in for.
Exactly.
So how can you assume that you have to... I'm not saying it's wrong to keep your identity concealed and to obviously protect sensitive information, but who are you to say that you need to be on guard against this person?
Yeah. I think another thing is that it's not necessarily black or white. There's some people who they're just indifferent to it. Because, if we're not on the inside, how are we supposed to have a lot of opinions on it? One thing that stuck out to me a lot was that my exchange partner refers to us as the free world. And I think that that's so I want to know what experiences key moments that she's had in prison, because I know that she mentioned to me how she misses being outside. She liked being kayaking. She liked sports, and she liked being around the environment. But you don't really think about that when you're living, when you're going to school, when you're going to work. You don't consider yourself to be in the free world. And I know that in class we had talked about how oftentimes it's in secluded areas where we don't have to look at them or think about them often.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the second half of our podcast, From Bars to Books. You're here with your hosts Charlotte,
Anna, Jets,
and Murdoch.
Today we're going to be exploring the second 2 points of this podcast that we kind of dove into in the first half the other day. Our third point that we wanted to talk about with you a little bit and to talk to each other about is what impact educational programs make on the lives of incarcerated people. And this is an important question to ask because impact doesn't necessarily mean that it has to have a positive connotation. It can also have a negative or even a neutral connotation for both people for both the perception of people in the quote-unquote free world and for people who are currently incarcerated. To answer this question, what we decided to do was to conduct a survey where we asked incarcerated students their different questions. The questions that we asked were if education was an easily accessible resource within the prison system, if they were part of any other educational programs besides the class that they were currently enrolled in, that is the mirror class of ours, if there were enough educational programs available, what kind of impact these programs had on their life, which I think is the most important question. And then we gave them the opportunity to write a paragraph telling us about one educational program that has made a strong impact on their life. We made sure to keep these questions, while specific, still broad enough that students didn't feel like they were constrained to one specific answer, because we didn't want to make them feel like they had to speak positively about these programs if that wasn't their true feelings surrounding them. So one quote that we got from an exchange partner, and all of these are anonymous, for the first question, which if education was an easily accessible resource, this person responded no. They did not believe that. They also are not part of any other educational programs besides the class that they're currently enrolled in, so that could have an impact on their perception of education as well. Mm-hmm. They do not believe that there are enough educational programs available. However, they do think that this only class, has made a positive impact on their life. And just to give you guys kind of some insight into what they say, and this was the quote that they came up with. When I first came to prison in 1984, I was 18, uneducated, and damaged. In 1987, I went into a business education class. Going in, I never sat in front of a typewriter, and starting out, I typed 8 words a minute. By graduation time, I was typing 75 words per minute, still today too. That was a first for me, experiencing an accomplishment and to know what confidence felt like. I will never forget it. If it wasn't for, quote-unquote, education, when I first got to prison, I didn't know what direction my life would have taken, even in prison. And do you want to say anything about that, Jet, or mention another quote from any of your partners that you collected?
I just want to dive into this one real quick because we see the positive of it here. And as you said, the impact is not always positive. It could be negative as well. But I just think it's crazy that she started out with 8 and she's typing 75 now. So not only do you see here that these programs are helping them, like actually helping them and benefiting them in that way, but they also help their confidence. So it's not even like a oh, I'm getting smart. No, like it's like they actually are gaining confidence off of it, and it's just so nice to see. Like when I first read this quote, I was like, dang, like 18, like you felt like you were uneducated and damaged, and like as a 20-year-old, like 18 was 2 years ago. I can't imagine only typing 7 words per minute at 18, and then finally graduating like a year later, like however many years later this person graduated, because honestly, I don't know, 84, 87?
1984.
3 years then? No. Yeah, 3. Is that 4? No, 3. Math is not my strong suit, clearly, but it's okay. But yeah, like the confidence that you probably get from that 75 words per minute, crazy. But I just want to go into another anonymous one that we got, but as someone who was their exchange partner, I knew that this was my partner, and their response wasn't so positive. What they said was, I have gotten my high school diploma here, and it was hard work most of the time. I had to do it on my own or find someone to help me because the person that was in charge of the class was too busy helping other people that paid her to spend more time with them. But the inmate has since left. But it was hard to get because I have a disability that makes it hard to learn. Now, my partner, I knew that this was my partner first off because of the way that they wrote. As you can see, it's very like chopped, but I'm pretty sure she has dyslexia or something like that. I know English isn't even her first language either, so obviously she doesn't have the capability to write as well as others in her school or in the program. But despite this, though she said this on paper and in the survey, through my exchanges with her, she often talked about, even though she does feel like sometimes it could be biased based on, like, obviously other people are spending time with the other inmates more because they pay, whatever, which is really unfair in my opinion. I think that's crazy, but doesn't matter. She also talked to me about how, though that happens, she still feels good knowing that she's doing something with her life there in prison. And I feel like that also correlates to the positive quote that we mentioned earlier about, at the end of that quote, she said, "I didn't know what direction my life would have taken even in prison." And I just think that's like, that meshes with the negative quote of my partner, because you know what I mean?
Because there's some uncertainty in her answer there. She's not sure what path she will go down, regardless of whether or not she receives this education.
Exactly.
Yeah. I really like that we got to hear a bit of a negative, because my exchange partner and I, we spoke about how she discovered mental strength and how she has more time for herself now, because before she would be studying and taking care of her kids. I don't think that this quote is from my exchange partner, but it still stood out to me. It says, "This semester, E4C class is only the second educational choice I've had available to me. However, I have thoroughly enjoyed each one, and I'm sincerely looking forward to any future classes, as well as any other type of educational and or self-betterment programs."
This is kind of off topic a little bit, but I wanted to kind of speak upon it. Yesterday, I was reading an article that one of our professors sent to the class. It's called "Reading Through the Lines, The Correlation Between Literacy and Incarceration" by a past class facilitator at the same prison that our professor teaches at. Her name is Elizabeth Thompson. This article was published in March 21st of 2022. What I think is so interesting about this article is it's a collection of juvenile justice advocates who have seen a disproportionate number of children with reading disabilities, and how that kind of ties into how many people end up in prison, and then how that leads to prison education, and the impact that it can have on the students inside. So what they mention is that if you fail school all the time, if you don't know how to read starting in, what did you say it was, like third grade?
Yeah, it was based off of like your third grade test scores.
You internalize a lot of things about yourself that show up in other behaviors like violence or crime, and that's what leads so many young people to a more criminal lifestyle. It is said that reading disability and incarceration are intertwined. It doesn't end in the juvenile justice system either. A study from 2,000 incarcerated people in Texas prisons found that approximately 80% of Texas prisoners were functionally illiterate. So I feel like programs like this letter exchange program that we're a part of can benefit these people, and maybe the impact that it has on them initially they don't think is positive, because it's really hard to learn how to read and it's really hard to learn how to write, especially when you're older. And maybe that is frustrating for them, and maybe they feel like they don't want to do it. I don't know, but I feel like through these programs it is impacting them in ways that they might not even know about. And it's certainly impacting me as well. Being able to communicate with them.
I wanted to double check that I got like the information correct. So I found on Reading Partners, that's like the name of it, they have an article from October 7th, 2013. It says, "Do prisons use third grade reading scores to predict the number of prison beds they'll need?" And I found, it's not necessarily just third, but it says you see a student not reading at his or her grade level by the end of the third grade is 4 times less likely to graduate high school on time, and 6 times less likely for students from low-income families.
But this actually correlates to an online article called "Prison Education Programs: What to Know," published by U.S. News and World Report. that was written by Sarah Woods, and Sarah Woods says how a 2018 U.S. Department of Justice study found that about 68% of inmates released from state prisons in 2005 were rearrested within 3 years. And then she continues to talk about how a 2018 meta-analysis published in the Journal of Experimental Criminology found that individuals who enroll in post-secondary education programs are 48% less likely to be reincarcerated than their peers who do not. So by that, I'm saying, like, education makes a difference. So the whole third grade thing, like, it correlates. Like, it kind of makes sense when you think about it, because, like, the fact that these people, while in prison, once you enroll, they're less likely to go back to prison. That just proves how much of an impact education has on one person, to the point where they won't be repeating crimes or going back to their old ways. Like, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I was just about to say the same thing.
Not to cut you guys off, but I think that kind of leads into our final point, final main point, which is if incarcerated students can actually benefit from these educational programs, not just if we believe that they can benefit from them. And benefit in this case means if it will make a positive mental, physical, and all around, like, positive life for these students. So I love how we are reading all of these quotes. I kind of wanted to throw another one in here. This is from an article that is called Beyond Recidivism, Exploring Formerly Incarcerated Student Perspectives on the Value of Higher Education in Prison by author Patrick Philippe Conway. This is a case study he does where he interviews previously incarcerated students on their perception of higher education that they received while they were in prison. This is one by a woman named Pamela, and he writes, Pamela described how the cumulative effect of coursework within the program was that it better enabled her to think critically about dynamics within her own life, her family's life, and within her broader communities. She felt encouraged to ask and seek answers to her own questions. Pamela was an incarcerated woman in her early 50s who was self-described as multiracial Native American, and she was in a particular educational program that was unspecified in the study. Do you guys have anything to say about that, or have you noticed that in any of your exchanges with your partners? Have they mentioned anything about how this program specifically has benefited them?
I didn't necessarily get anything from my partner when it came to, like, specifics on the dynamics within her family's life, etc., like Pamela is stating. But I just think it's interesting that Pamela is a woman in her early 50s, yet her way of thinking changed just by these classes. So I think that also proves that no matter what age, like we were talking about how earlier we were saying how, well, you mentioned actually, Charlotte, that that usually it's harder to learn things later on in our lives. But the fact that Pamela's in her early 50s and she's doing it, and it's actually impacting the way that she thinks, and it's changing her dynamics with her own, even like her own personal family, like that's hard.
Yeah, it is so hard. And it is also proof that at any age you can learn and you can better yourself.
Exactly.
So people are capable of change always.
Exactly. So that answers our question: can incarcerated students benefit from educational programs? At least that is one way that they can benefit.
This is kind of going back to one of our first quotes, one of our first questions on what the definition of deserving is. But I was kind of thinking as you were speaking, if people are truly capable of change, then does that justify them deserving this education?
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. Wait, you're right. Like, if they are capable of changing, doesn't that mean they are also capable of deserving it? Like, deserving that chance to change? Wow, that's crazy. A question. That was such a good link. Like,
that's a question to think about. I know that personally, my exchange partner, she did have something to say about this. She included an entire essay inside of one of her letters.
Oh, beautiful.
And something that I wanted to read from her essay was that she wrote, In order for educational programs to be effective, it is of the essence that they must be accessible, relevant, and adapt to the needs of incarcerated students. This includes offering a variety of courses where education and vocational training are applicable. Moreover, resources and emotional support to help people overcome any fear, struggles that they might have regarding education while incarcerated. Education in prison is shown to be effective in several studies. The people that partake in educational programs have less possibility to relapse in comparison to those that don't do it. Not only education improves job opportunities, but that also contributes to self-esteem and the ability of making well-informed decisions. Well-educated people can fund well-paid jobs and therefore have less incentives to go back to the criminal, addictive thinking and an active lifestyle that they were once a part of. And I think that kind of ties back to the quote that we had mentioned earlier by Sarah Woods, speaking about recidivism rates and the lack of education and how that brings people back into prison.
I think the fact that your exchange partner even mentions that benefit, the fact that she wrote on an essay first off is on literally benefit is, I don't know, I feel like that, not that we're trying to prove a point here.
And also that was unprompted, by the way. I didn't ask her to
Really?
write that essay. No, I did not ask her to. She was sharing her opinions openly and freely. And she is such a strong and opinionated woman.
Oh, okay. Do you know how old she is?
She is in her late 40s, I believe.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That really puts, like, whenever I hear the ages of people and incarcerated people and like the fact that they're doing school while being incarcerated and they end up being on the older side, I don't know, that like really broadens my perspective on it because I didn't know. Like before this class I had no idea that like
I think it's also important to know that not every single person who is incarcerated doesn't know how to read, and not every single person who's incarcerated didn't have educational opportunities in the past. Because my exchange partner, she was a highly educated person before she came to prison, and I think that kind of gives her leverage to help other students within the prison system and to teach them things that they may not be able to fully grasp without somebody who is as well versed in the educational realm.
I think that through this program, I got to see it with my exchange partner. I don't know about you guys, but I enjoyed the fact that I got to see the evolution of her writing.
Oh,
like
whoa,
especially I genuinely like, because in her first letter, it was very like, how do I explain this? It was very direct and it was like very plain. There wasn't any aspects of where I thought that, like, she was critically thinking about stuff, or like she, like especially when introducing herself, it was mainly just like plain, like, I don't know how to explain, like plain English, like just
or formal,
just flat formal conversation, like nothing really special. But like as we got more letters through, I really got to see like her critical thinking. Like I have a quote here from like when we were talking about public outrage, how it could be a tool and benefit for society, and she wrote that like public outrage can sometimes be a useful tool in getting things moving in a motion of such needed change. You see, when studying history, you can see that over and over again there are situations that need solutions. The only thing that keeps things from change was complacency. It takes a spark sometimes to get people going. So, I mean, that was 2 letters in, by the way. It's not like it wasn't like it took a bunch of letters to get to this point. It was literally in 2 letters, and I was like, wow, like that.
Do you think that she was influenced by your critical thinking as well, and she kind of drew off of that, or do you think that she gained that knowledge from simply being in the class alone?
I think that she had gained that critical insight like from her own experiences. The only reason I'm saying that is because in her first letter she had spoken about how she was like delving into a bunch of topics, including history and including like different aspects of the history of countries and the history of culture. So I think that she definitely connected this to like our readings to that subject and like got to think about like the broader aspects of it. But yeah, I mean,
yeah, she was able to circulate that information and connect it all, which I think is something that takes a little while to learn how to do, but once you've mastered it, it is such an incredible skill to actually have.
Yeah.
So kind of just to tie up loose ends here, I wanted to thank everybody for listening to this podcast, for sticking with us throughout this past approximately hour, and to kind of summarize the discussion that we've had and emphasize the importance of understanding and supporting education within the prison system. Is there anything that you guys want to say just to kind of tie it up about each point that we've made?
Honestly, just don't judge a book by its cover. And like I really went into this thinking a completely different thing, and I've gotten pleasantly surprised. So from my experience, take it from me, don't judge a book by its cover. Very important lesson.
I remember on the first day of class that our professor said that by the end of this class that these people will be our best friends that we've been writing letters to. And I did not believe her. I'm not going to lie. I did not believe her because I thought to myself, how can we make such a strong connection with somebody through letters and only letters? And it is safe to say that I think I've made a stronger connection with this woman than most of the people currently in my life.
And also, when we were first writing the letters, like the difference when we started our draft that we didn't know what to say, and then when we got the sheet of paper where they were like introducing themselves, just how easily it was to have a conversation with them afterwards. I hope that at least from this podcast that people now know of what programs exist, because I think that that's like the biggest thing, like knowing that it exists. Because after we watched that PBS video, it's still stuck with me. I think it's really interesting, especially finding out that like you can teach, like.
Wait, which PBS video are you talking about?
The one that we watched, was it the first or the second class?
About like how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
That one was really interesting. I think about it frequently. So I hope that after this, they like know that these programs are available and hopefully that they can look into it. Because I think a majority of the results supported it.
I think that through this class, I was able to connect with like an emotional aspect of myself and like get in tune with like being sympathetic and, you know, understanding different perspectives. Because it's just that like reading these letters and like getting to interact with these people, like it's one thing to read it from a book, you know, it's one thing to watch a documentary, it's one thing to disconnect yourself and like not delve into this aspect so much. But when you actually get these letters and realize that like these are actual people with different lives and different perspectives and different outcomes from that of your own, like that's a connection that I don't think I'll ever forget about. This is something that has impacted various aspects of my life, and I hope that through this podcast people can understand that this isn't just fiction. This isn't just us talking about something that doesn't exist entirely. No, this is something that's real. This is something that needs to be said and spoken out loud.
So good. I really like how you mentioned that it like got you in tune with sympathy. I feel like people aren't that sympathetic these days. Or like maybe it's just like what I've seen, like I guess like algorithm or whatever.
I completely agree with you actually, and not only just sympathetic but empathetic and general kindness in the world overall.
Like meanness is like it's cruelty,
prevalent.
Like, yes, I feel like it's kind of expected.
It is expected. It is expected. I hate it. This morning I was driving to school and I had my blinker on and somebody let me in. The first person let me in and I started crying.
No, because I do the same thing. No, someone lets me in on the road and I get all teary-eyed and I go, thank you. Like it's especially here. No, because there's times where I let people in and Oh my god, the other day at a parking lot, this guy was at a stop sign, and I was technically gonna go into park. But because I knew I was gonna block him, like, because I was taking up most of the space, I went all the way to my stop sign. I let him go so I could reverse into the spot, and tell me why he was side-eyeing me. He had, like, the window down, and he was glaring at me as if I didn't let him go. But whatever. That's driving. That's different.
Completely different, but
No,
okay.
but people are just mean these days. Like, they're very mean. I don't like it.
I mean, yeah, we live in a world where, like, you turn on the news and it's always like the
There's something
worst
negative.
possible
Yes.
outcome. Like you like it belongs in a video game, or it belongs in like a like it. Oh my god, I'm forgetting his name. But it belongs in like a very gory action movie. You know what I mean? Like,
It's hard to see the positive in things sometimes these
yeah.
days. But to tie it back to this podcast, I feel like this program has helped me see the positive in people. It has
Yes.
helped me see the absolute best
Yeah.
in people.
And not even like just incarcerated people. Like
Everybody.
everyone that we surveyed. First off,
Those
Are we
responses.
gonna talk about how we went into this survey thinking that people were gonna think that they don't deserve an education? But 99.7% said, was it 99.7?
Yeah.
It was about that many. Almost 100%. Only one person said no to that question. Everyone said yes, they deserve an education. So
Which
that
was completely
restored-
unexpected.
Like, we found those results in class, and I remember tearing up and looking at you guys, and I was like, my faith in humanity has restored. Because, like, I don't, like, yeah, this has brought a lot of different, perspectives.
But still, and this is a quote from my exchange partner as well. She says, "It's a game of telephone. You may talk to someone about something, but the way they distribute the message and information may be completely different to the actual message itself, which is an issue. Not only this, but aesthetics can be so alluring that the message might not even matter." And I think that is so perfect when talking about this program, because when, you know, kind of going back to what we were saying at the very beginning of the podcast, when we each mentioned this to people in our lives, they all had this negative perception of what we were doing and this immediate judgment of the people who we were talking to. And I'm sure that if they described it to somebody, they would have a very different way of putting it than we
Than we
would.
do.
But
For sure.
just to end it off with a quote, my partner says, Hita Soul says, "I think we all learn eventually that violence is not the answer to solving problems. Solving problems is really about coming together to have one main goal in a community, which is to make that community a better place."
I think it's cool how the letters, like, it's not violent. Like, a letter is something so simple. I don't know. This has made me appreciate letters so much more.
Truly, it has.
Anyway, with that, we will end our first podcast.
So-
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Again, this is Charlotte.
And,
Jets.
And Murdoch.
Have a wonderful day, and hopefully we will produce another episode for you guys to listen to soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.